Okay, so finishing up the question that we started on yesterday, if we have this line of best fit that we created, and we have here these 2 points that are fairly close to being on the line. Again, line of best fit is not exact, so we just look for 2 points that look like they lay on it pretty closely. But those 2 points do have exact values because we took those points came from our year and average earnings from our chart. So we can look over at our data here, and those 2 points are in 1990 and 2000. So if I do 1990 minus 2000 on the bottom, and 1990 is 13.77, 2000 is 17.48. So if I do 1990 minus 2000, then I do 13.7 minus 17.48 on top. So 13.77 minus 17.48 gives us a rise of negative 3.71, and 1990 minus 2000 gives us a run of negative 10, which if we divide that out gives us 0.371. So if we get 0.371, that's our slope. And of course, if we wanted, we could also write that as 371 over 1,000. And that would give to us in the more typical rise over run form. But it really doesn't matter. We can also leave it as 0.371 for this purpose. All right, so once I have my slope, now we can do the exact same thing that we did in the previous section. You can either use y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1 and do point slope form, or we can use our standard form, y equals mx plus b, so slope-intercept form, and plug in what we know. What we know is the slope is 0.371, and we can choose any y and x. So I, for instance, will use the very first values here. Or actually, since we want to use ones that are close to the graph, you might want to use one that's pretty close to being on it, which actually 1980 and 9.95 is pretty close. Or I can use one of those 2 points that I started with. The only thing is if you have a point that's very far off the line, you don't want to use it as your x and y. But since 1980 and 9.94 are pretty close to the line, I can use them. So my y value here is 9.94 minus, or excuse me, equals 0.371, the slope, times the x value, which is 1980 plus b, so 1980 plus, times 0.371 gives me 734.58. So I get 9.94 equals 734.58. And change to a different color, it's more visible. Let's switch to red. So 734.58. And then from here, that's plus b. So to find out what b is, I need to subtract 734.58 from both sides. And of course, 9.94 minus that gives me negative 724.64. So that's my b value. So plugging back into the equation, we now know that b is negative 724.64, and that our slope is 0.371. So, in our final form, our equation for our line would look like y equals 0.371x, the slope times x, plus the y-intercept, which is negative, so minus 724.64. Now, again, the important thing to remember here is my equation, your equation, could be two completely different things. If I had used 1990 and 13.77, this point here, instead of 1980 and 9.94, I would have gotten slightly different values. So it's not an exact, but if I plug in, so we've talked about, what about in the year 2035? Well, that means x is 2035, so plugging in the formula, I have 0.371 times 2035 minus 724.64. So, in the year 2035, my expected income would be somewhere in the range of $30.35. Now, here is where there should be some sort of commonality. If you came up with a slightly different formula, but you plugged in 2035 as well, your answer should still be somewhere in the range of that $30.35. It may be $30.50, it may be $30.15, but it should be somewhere in that range if you've got your line of best fit fairly close and if you've used good points on your equation. So, again, not an exact value. This is about predicting, and predictions aren't exact. They're exactly that. They're predictions. No one can predict the outcome for sure of anything, or else betting wouldn't exist. Okay? Things are not predictable. There's sometimes, but you can at least get a good feel for it. So this is just getting a good feel based on what we've seen in the past. What do we expect to see happen in the future? So, anyway, that just finishes up that example. We may look at another one as well, but I just wanted to finish that one up since we'd kind of started in class and didn't get through with it.